very important is we give them a time to share a book with their child. So it's normally about a 5-minute time. The children can choose a book from a group of box of books, and the parents, after you've modelled reading to the child, they are then going to read to their child and share a story. And we talk a lot one-on-one with the parents as they're doing this, saying, you know, you don't, if it's an English book and you can't read this book, you know, you can look at the pictures, you can ask them questions about the book, you can ask the children to tell you the story in the book, and reinforce all those little skills and give them some tips for when they're reading at home with their children one-on-one. And you'll see that the participation does increase.
You get a lot of bilingual stuff happening at this point, because with some parents, if they do have a little bit more English than their children, because they're possibly speaking whatever their language is mostly at home, this is an opportunity where they tend to do a little bit of both. They'll be looking at the pictures, they might say it in English, or they might ask us what the word is in English, and then they'll try and get their child to say it, or they might talk to them in their language and so forth. So it's quite interesting to watch how they do that shared reading and interacting with reading.
Yeah, and you'll have those parents that may have very limited English at first, very reluctant to, and at the beginning, and after a while you'll see, once we've helped them, sometimes we'll sit down and one-on-one model with them what they can do. After a while you'll see them participating greatly towards the end of the program. Okay, and that's up to you.
Me again?
Thank you again.
The next thing that we do, as you see there, is the sensory activity, which builds on the story that we've read and the theme of the week. So we've already done the facilitated activity where they're all working together to do something like that sorting, classifying activity. Then they're doing something which is more individual. So you see there examples where we did clothing, I think, with the putting the clothes on the people. And again, that's building on previous weeks where they've already done about the body. So they're using the language to be able to talk about what goes on the chest or what goes on the feet. And we've also already done colour. So as they're doing it with the parent, they can be saying, you know, blue shirt, what goes there, you know, a blue shirt or red shoes, whatever it is. The bottom one is the colour book, which is here, where Trish, I did the same thing. We went to Bunnings and pinched all their colourful cards and then made up lovely little books from it.
Separate runs, so you're not coming out with that many.
Exactly, but it's really a good way of doing colour because they all have fabulous words like fun and games and power blue and ship harbour and brilliant blue. So getting that idea that there are also shades of a colour and not just all one version of a colour. And then, you know, cheap stickers. I had tons of stickers from when my kids were young at home and just brought them all in and different coloured objects, and they have so much fun sticking that one in. That's a bit labour intensive in terms of the prep for you, unless you've got volunteers to help you with that. Another activity, which is the one outlined on the slide there, was the rainbow shape, which Edith introduced to Trish and I, and that was as simple as having a rolled up piece of paper with different coloured streamers in, so they make that themselves with the different coloured crepe paper, stick it in, wind it up, and they've got a shaker like a cheerleader shaker with all the different colours. With the sensory activity there, you're trying to give them something that they can do at home, so it's not busy work. Those of you who might have been keen to get rid of craft at story time and no longer do craft at story time because it's so labour intensive, we're trying to not have that process, and we're trying not to just produce a thing that they can go home and show people. We're trying to get them to do something that they can build on during the week. It might even be something like Play-Doh cutting shapes out during the session, and then we give them the Play-Doh to take home and they can do it at home. With the weather chart, they're making that in the second week and then sticking it onto their fridge so that every day we are encouraging them at home every day to then talk with their adults about what the weather is today. There's a hungry caterpillar one down there on the table, which is a counting one. It's just the numbers 1 to 5 and then the different fruit from the story, and the little caterpillar attached with a piece of string so that during the week they can practice sort of counting the caterpillar along the row to count up. So it's things like that that they can build on. Of course, it's described there as a sensory activity, so we're trying to get them to use all the senses. in the example in the handout there with the streamer, they can be talking about long and short, they can be doing fast and slow for the shaking, they can talk about the different colours, they can talk about the different textures, they can talk about sound. Again, as Trish said with other activities, it's really encouraging the language enrichment for both the carer and the child. So yeah, that's really worthwhile. Where are we up to? Yeah, other considerations there, fine motor development and scissor skills often, or you might get parents where they're not that thrilled about having scissors at home to be used, so it gives them a safe environment again, and you can show them that it's important to let the child have a go and for the parent not to just take over and do it all for them. So that's, you know, through your conversation with them, you're giving them some really good messages for the early childhood development of the child. The idea of following instructions, sharing equipment and things, the different learning styles, as you've got up there, and tactile learning. So as Trish says at the end there, there doesn't always need to be an end product. Yeah, that's the next one.
Okay. Yeah. So that's basically the structured learning part. Obviously the things that Tricia and Angela have been telling you about, that's not necessarily what they'll be saying to parents, of course, you know, but that's what you need, that's what is all that implicit stuff that will sit there. And I mean, it's the same when you're doing your ordinary story times and rhyme times. There's a lot of implicit modelling and all of that kind of thing that's going on. But at the end of the session comes a very important part. After we've, we show them what the craft activity is going to be, and then, but just before then, we just reiterate that we encourage them to, you know, join, borrow from the items from the library that are available. Use the song sheets during the week to share songs with their children. As Angela's talked about, the different activities and things like that. The morning tea is just very simple, just a cup of tea and coffee, water, and a few biscuits. We started out with a packet of, you know, the standard Mills and Wares biscuits, but we were finding that they all just disappeared. So we got a little bit, we thought, right, because there was some kids going in with cups and going away with an enormous pile of biscuits. So we did moderate the amount of biscuits that we put out, but it was also, it's that opportunity then for the parents to talk to each other. It's an opportunity for us to talk to them, to find out a little bit more about them and all of that kind of thing. Get that little bit of anecdotal feedback of how they've enjoyed the sessions or what they're getting from them. You know, those kinds of things. And then after that, they, you know, at the end of the session, they just drift away. So this is some of the feedback that we've had. And it's generally been, you know, fantastic. All of, I mean, from our point of view, the parents are often commenting, you know, how much they enjoy coming to this class. They call it a class because they do perceive it very much as a structured learning situation. And we don't sort of dispel that, but that's part of what they're learning as well. And I mean, some of the kids we had were only two and a half, up to about 4, and so, you know, for them they were really starting to get that early thing of being able to just sit and listen and concentrate. So that's a really important thing.
One thing I found too is that a lot of the parents were very concerned about school readiness, and because they weren't participating in childcare, formal education for their children, they were worried about this. And yet we've had some children that were pre-kindy when they did the first session, and then they were actually enrolled in kindy while they were doing the second lot of sessions, and they said that it really did help them prepare. Those sitting down skills, the listening skills, the scissor skills, all of those things did help them, and they did see that as really a route for school readiness for their kids.
The thing is also encouraging the parents to practice their English at home, so that when the kids come, this isn't the only place that they're speaking English, and so, you know, by giving them some of the songs and those sorts of tools, it does give them that opportunity to actually practice their English at home, even if it's a very simple thing around colours, numbers, parts of the body, whatever it is. but that's, you know, helping them and their children. So just following on to where to next, the four of us, so Edith is away on leave at the moment, otherwise she would be here. We're planning to hold a Train the Trainer workshop on Wednesday the 6th of August in the afternoon. If you're interested, you can leave your names with us now, otherwise we will be advertising on PLO. And at that session, I would encourage you, if you can, to bring your adult services librarian with them, and for them to, you know, start to get this message of adult and family learning out there. We will be, as part of that, whether it'll actually happen by the training session, but there will be a handbook which will include lesson plans and other tips and things that we've gathered along the way. With that, starting to look at establishing a community of practice for all of those libraries that are actually running the Let's program, so that whether that's through the YPS blog or other means, because that then starts us to be able to share activities, book lists, all sorts of things like that that we can use to support the program, and particularly our remote and regional colleagues who might like to run the program but aren't able to have these sorts of sessions.
Can I just say one thing, Jane? As I think you said at the start, Trish and Edith and I all have a teaching background, but the thing about the program is that it's so repetitive, and it's been tweaked to the stage that we found that this structure really does work, and it's very, very straightforward for anybody to do. I think too that because it does build from one week to the next, that whole socialisation thing and just the feeling really positive about coming into the library and having made connections is a real key advantage of it. So in the program that we ran, going back to the morning tea, it was quite funny. We started with biscuits, and then some of the families weren't touching them at all, and we started talking to them, and we ended up by about the third week having spring rolls and samosas from the little bakery next door, and doing that with fruit instead of biscuits, and the kids just loved it, and the parents loved it. And then, as Trish said, with the end of our 10-week pilot, our families were really quite devastated that we weren't going to be just automatically doing it the next term, but people who previously hadn't come into the library at all, who'd been referred by agencies, they'd already organised to have a final picnic. And I'm based at Wanneroo Library as the Literacy and Learning Specialist, and I've had families from the program come all the way from Girraween area to Wanneroo and actually had the confidence to go up to the staff there and ask if they can see me to come and say hi. So just that confidence of being able to be in the library and feel comfortable engaging with staff and really using the library is one of the huge outcomes of it, besides the actual sort of structured learning part of it. And I thought that was an important point.
We have some families that made friends in the first session, and they come in every Thursday now, even though they're not participating in Let's. They come together every Thursday and do activities in the place and catch up. So, and they're from completely different backgrounds, and the one thing that they had in common is that they're learning English together, and their children are friends and they're friends. So it is building lovely networks and communities.
And as Jane said, you can get a real range of people where you've got, like, the adult might have really poor English, but the child has been in some sort of daycare or just socialisation and their English is really good. You might get the reverse, or you might get bilingual families where they're speaking their language at home, but they don't know any other bilingual families at all, and you're suddenly introducing this whole new common denominator with people they wouldn't meet otherwise. So everybody's different, you'll find in your groups.
I'll just sort of reiterate what Angela said about teaching backgrounds. The structure of the courses, the outlines, it will be there, but it's just building on the knowledge and skills you already have and just utilising those. So, you know, we would really encourage you to consider giving it a go. So at the end of the session, we always have our goodbye song, which, and as I said, at the end of the workshop that we ran with the adult literacy people, which we got some great feedback about. They were really interested in all of the different activities and all of that kind of thing that they thought that they would incorporate into their adult lessons. So that kind of reinforces that the things that we're doing are applicable across the board. So I guess at that point we can say, if you're happy and you know it, ask a question. And Tonique, you've been working with the program at Swan. Is that you've probably got some